But the second segment, Al, is named After Further Review. And basically, we're talking about controversial calls. This is the big thing that's going over Twitter, specifically from the opposing team. But I'll start it off with the first one. And that's the one we kind of touched on earlier in the show, but a targeting call from Shaun Wade against Trevor Lawrence. And it looked like that he, at first in real time, it kind of seemed like it might have been an okay tackle, but there was a very hard clack between helmets. Trevor Lawrence was on the field, on the ground, and Trevor Lawrence said as he was laying there, he heard Ohio State players saying, "We're glad we knocked him out. We finally got him out the game. They're over now." And it actually, pardon my French, but pissed off Trevor Lawrence in his own words. And he got up quick. If you noticed, Al, he got up quick.
Yeah.
And he was like, "I am not going out of this game like this," even though it hurt really bad. And then they ended up going back to review. The replay review came into play a lot that game.
Yeah.
And they called targeting and ejected him. Ohio State fans immediately saying after the game, Shaun Wade was their key player, and they mold their defense around him. And if they lost him, now they struggled the rest of the game. And I'm calling him on that one because just last year, Al, Clemson lost their starting defensive lineman. They lost a starting tight end, and they lost an offensive lineman. They lost 3 players to the Osterine scandal and still went on to beat both teams by a combined total of 55 points. So it's all about perspective and how you use your excuse, whether for you or against you. And to me, Clemson couldn't pick that targeting call. Clemson had no control over that. Neither did Ohio State. I mean, in the moment, you try to make the best tackle you can, and something like that happens. Now, do I like to see star players leave the game? No, but that's what happened.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, look, I actually thought there was targeting a few plays before that. I think Trevor Lawrence had run kind of the middle left of the field, something like that. And I heard 2 helmets hit. I want to say it was number 4, maybe Fuller, one of their DBs that hit him. I thought there should have been a review on that. I never really saw a replay. I guess we were probably kind of hurried up the next play. Nobody noticed. But look, guys, this is the definition of targeting. Lowering the helmet, crown of the helmet, leading with it into the helmet of another player. It's targeting. Look, I'm not a big fan of the targeting rule. I don't like the fact that you get thrown out of a game. I think you have to kind of have to decide whether there was malice intent there to injure somebody, and that's a really difficult thing to measure. It's almost impossible, which is I would imagine why they didn't put it in the rule. But I just think it should be a 15-yard penalty, and you kind of move on. Maybe if you get 2 or 3 in a game, you can kind of get ejected. But I hate the fact that the game, can change just like that. I mean, we've had it happen to us before too as well. So I mean, I'm not gonna cry over it, especially since Clemson got the W. But that was a targeting call by rule. Even if I disagree with the rule, by rule, it's targeting. He's ejected. It's the right call.
And if you go check out some of the pictures on Twitter, Zach Lentz has one. I mean, he's looking at the ground. He's basically looking at his kneecaps, head down, hitting him top of his head at Trevor Lawrence's ear hole. So I don't really see how you can say that wasn't targeting. That really wasn't the one that was the most controversial.
Right. This
one, maybe not the most controversial. I'm going to hold the one that I think is the most, Al. This next one was roughing the punter. Mm-hmm. As you know, Clemson got into 4th down, and they decided to punt the ball. Kind of seemed like they were thinking about going for it, but they were in their own territories, and they were already down. And so they decided, hey, let's not panic. Let's keep perspective. Let's go ahead and punt the ball. Well, what happened? The guys ran into the punter. 2 guys, actually. It looked like one guy hit his leg. The other guy hit his shoulder, chest, neck area. What did you think about that one?
It's the exact same thing as the first one. By rule, that's an easy call. There's no controversy here. We're calling them controversial calls because Ohio State fans are upset about it. They're talking about it. They're posting about it on Twitter and how the referees were against them. That is the definition of roughing the punter. They destroyed the punter, plain and simple. Okay, there's no controversy. Look at the rule, read the rule. It's very plain to see. Now, again, we're going to get to the call next. I would imagine that was the most controversial. But the first 2, targeting, roughing the punter, 100% correct calls by the refs, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I can see running into the punter, running into the kicker, if it's just the tip of his foot or his foot or the plant foot, even though, to be honest with you, the plant foot's very dangerous. I mean, You could tear ACL, you could tear Achilles by running into somebody's plant foot. So And I've seen it in previous games, not with Clemson, but I've seen people get really hurt. Punters get really hurt by somebody just darting into their plant foot. So I like the idea that you protect a punter in the sense that, you don't want guys just blindly launching at them, no different than you want guys launching into a quarterback. But to me, if you're going to hit somebody's chest, and then also it looked like Spires got turned around, got grabbed, hit in the chest, turned around at the same time. To me, at that point, and it wasn't like a flop. It wasn't a classic Greg Paulus Duke moment. It was definitely a hit in the chest that caused him to spin. He fell down and laid there. Hey, that's textbook soccer, baby. You lay there. You don't just pop right back up, because guess what happens when you pop right back up? No call.
Yep.
And whether it should have been a call or not. And I think that's happened to Clemson players before too. They get annihilated and it was really an illegal hit, and they pop right back up and get out on the field, and the referee's like, well, he's not hurt, so we'll move on, right? Sometimes you got to lay there, especially for kicker. But here's the one that was the most controversial, I guess you could say, from the Ohio State standpoint, because it's really hard to tell because they're picking every single thing out there in Twitterverse.
Right.
Most of the non-call pass interferences, I felt like there was pass interferences on both sides of the ball. So obviously there was an interception that was overturned because of defensive holding. That was a good call. So, there was pass interference calls on both sides. But the biggest one, Justin Ross, catch, fumble, incompletion, whatever it was. He catches the ball. I believe, Al, it was third down, catches the ball with his two hands up, keeping it away from the defender. The defender's all over his back, pushing him backwards. Momentum's pushing him backwards. As he tries to bring the ball into his body, it gets stripped, lands on the ground. Another defender picks it up, takes it into the end zone. Ohio State goes up by 1 point. At that point, it is then reviewed and overturned. Now, I'll tell you this, Al. Even I was kind of like, I don't know, man. Because if he was in the end zone, would it have been a touchdown? To me, no. It wouldn't have been a touchdown. They didn't give it to J.K. Dobbins. They said, hey, he had to make a controlling move with the ball. He caught it. Yes, he had it. But when he landed on the ground, it popped out. And so they said, well, you didn't get a touchdown. Now, it's interesting, though, if he was in the field and the ground caused a fumble, it could have been down by contact on the ground. But because it was in the end zone, they said, well, you got to keep possession of it. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I'll tell you, here's my point with Justin Ross. If it was a catch, then I think the referee would have to say forward progress, because as a running back, they get hit going forward. They don't make any moves further towards their destination of the touchdown, their goal line, and they get pushed backwards for 4 steps or 3 steps. It's usually whistle, forward progress, into ball, even if they get stripped, because a lot of times it gets stripped because that's what they're trying to do. To me, if you're going to call it a catch, you should then call it forward progress and just then call it fourth down, and short, or fourth down and medium again. So even if it was a catch, I even see it not being a fumble and just being forward progress.
Yeah, no, those are a lot of great points there. And this was a crazy call. When we saw it live, I kind of saw, man, that looked incomplete, but it was really close to a fumble. And obviously the ref is trying to cover himself. So he throws the beanbag down like it's a fumble and lets them complete the play so they can go back and review it. Obviously there's some risk in that because, you kind of, if you can't decide, you have to go with the ruling on the field. So that's kind of tough, but you don't obviously want to blow a play dead when you can kind of go back and review it. So I understand why they did that. And, when we saw the replay, that's a catch to me. What his foot hit the ground 4 times? Is that what you said? It just looks like a catch. If that's not a catch, I think they need to change the rule, plain and simple. But again, if you look at it fast motion, full speed, it looks like he drops it in no time. I just don't understand. Even though when I was watching slow motion, full speed, I never could see how on earth his foot could hit the ground 4 times when live. It looked like it took about a half a second. It was crazy to watch. It really was. So I really felt for the officials on that one. Obviously glad it turned out in Clemson's favor, but that was a really tough call. I thought it looked like a catch to me. But again, if you want to talk about taking 4 steps, you kind of hit the nail on the head. To me, what about forward progress being stopped? It's really hard to call forward progress stopped when it went so fast. which is one of the reasons, obviously, they didn't do it. Obviously, we have the luxury of watching it in slow motion and see that his foot hit the ground 4 times. And that's one thing. But I'm not really sure I don't know what the rule is, to be honest with you, on forward progress. But when you actually look into the NCAA rules about what makes a catch, making a football move, does he tuck the football? Does he turn to run? Something like that. He started to tuck the ball. Obviously, that's when it got knocked loose. Some people were saying it was loose in his hands before that. I never saw that, but any of the replays that I was able to watch. But it was definitely a controversial call. One, in my opinion, that should have stood. Now, obviously, we don't know how that would have changed the game. I'm not going to say Ohio State would have won, just because that's 7 points. It doesn't work that way. There's still a lot of game left. It changes strategies. It changes play calls. It changes the way you do defense. So I'm not saying Clemson would have lost the game, but I do feel for Ohio State right there. I think they took what I would consider as a bad call right there, and it was a huge momentum swing as well.
Yeah, one good thing to look at it, if you're an Ohio State fan or whatever, is that they didn't turn around and score. So Clemson still punted the ball. Ohio State comes out, gets an interception. Isaiah Simmons intercepts the ball. Right. But then Clemson doesn't do anything with that. And then they come out and score. So they still go up by 22-21, I believe. Yes, 22-21 and then 23-21. So they still go up by 2. It just took longer. Instead of being earlier on in the third quarter, it was beginning of the fourth quarter. And so there is some time lost there, considering that the call was overturned compared to it would have been that score with 5 or 6 more minutes on the clock. Yep. So there's a difference there, but it really didn't change the flow of possession in the sense that who scored, because Clemson didn't take advantage of that or the next series. And so to me, I still feel like it didn't ruin the game as far as keeping it uneven. It did take down the time clock. Now I'll say this too. My father-in-law mentioned this. He's kind of not a Clemson fan, kind of is a Clemson fan. He kind of wishy-washy. He was an Alabama fan. He was a Florida fan. He likes college football in general. But he said to me, this is something that I love him to death, but he said something kind of got me, where he said, and he's going to be listening to this, and I know Thanksgiving is not going to be fun, or this New Year's dinner or lunch is not going to be fun coming up because I'm going to go over to his house. But he said something to me where it was like, Clemson got away with a lot of stuff. And I'm like, Steve, I love you, man, but Ohio State got away with a missed field goal. Clemson missed a field goal. Ohio State got away with Clemson making mistakes, uncharacteristic mistakes on defense. Ohio State was given T. Higgins in a fluke head injury where he didn't hit the guy's helmet and he didn't hit the ground, but he was held out for 2 quarters because being safe for concussion. Now, I want him to be safe for a concussion, but hey, how many more chances do you need? Ohio State was up by 16 points. Ohio State normally scores 48 points a game. Ohio State is the number 1 scoring offense in the nation before that game. But Clemson got all the things given to them. I'm not really. They got a lot of things given to them. Yeah, maybe. But where did Ohio State get things given to them? Hey, you just mentioned there was a time where Trevor Lawrence was headlocked. Yeah. There was a time before that. They're saying in chat that that same Wade guy had targeting on a couple plays before that they didn't call. And both the teams were holding all the time, right? But at the end of the day,